I have my snare drum coming in out of Pro Tools into my fader. I have that uncompressed, uneq'd snare drum going to my stereo mix. Then the insert send, I send out to a gate. I send that through a compressor, then I send that through 1176. And then I bring that compressed and gated snare drum up on another fader and just tuck it under the uncompressed.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, the show bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Jamie Tate, a Grammy and Emmy award-winning recording engineer, mixer, and producer. Jamie is owner of the Rukkus Room Studios right here in Berry Hill in Nashville, Tennessee. Jamie works on records of all kinds, from writers publishing demos all the way up to Grammy-winning and #1 chart-topping hits. And as you might have guessed, Rockstars, Jamie is also a longtime friend of mine. In fact, we went to college together at Middle Tennessee State University and studied in many recording classes together. After school, Jamie and I went different directions for a decade or so until I ran into him again in about 2007 and discovered that he had taken over Soundstage and opened the Rukkus Room Studios. So, of course, the first thing I did was hire Jamie to mix a record I was producing for an independent artist, Ryan Humbert from Akron, Ohio. Jamie mixed All Souls for New Shoes, and I'll, of course, include a link to that in the show notes as well. I was seriously blown away by how good Jamie had gotten at mixing that I made it my mission to learn from him every chance I could get. So I'm glad that we get to dig into all the details even more today. Jamie has recorded many legendary artists such as Alan Jackson, Brooks and Dunn, Marty Stuart, Justin Moore, Thomas Rhett, and Billy Currington. His clients include major labels like Big Machine and Broken Bow Records, and up-and-coming Nashville artist Jordan Rager, CJ Solar, RaeLynn and Smithfield. And he regularly works with professional country and pop songwriters from publishers such as Olé, SeaGayle, Dan Hodges Music, Starstruck, and many more. I'm also pretty sure he told me that he had even mixed a couple of tracks on Taylor Swift's breakout record in 2006. At one point, he told me that his studio was so busy, they were booked a year and a half in advance. I'm psyched to be hanging out today with one of the hardest working engineers in music, joining you from right here in his studio, the Rukkus Room. Please welcome Jamie Tate to Recording Studio Rockstars. Jamie, are you ready to rock, dude?
Yes.
Yes, nice.
What kind of microphone is this? Didn't know Fisher-Price made studio mic. No,
What's
I'm sorry.
wrong with this microphone?
Yeah, I'm sorry, people. It was just a joke. I just want to point out that Lidge gave me this monstrosity of a cable. It's like thicker than my dink, and sorry, can I say that here?
Yeah, I love it.
It's a klotz. Is
it's
that
like
right?
swearing without swearing.
Yeah, right. I'm courteous. And then he has this, I don't know what the hell it is. It's like a coat hanger wrapped in rubber.
Yeah, that's my microphone cable.
Yeah.
No, mine's a Mogami. Mine's just
is
like
it a Mogami? Just compared to
handmade
this.
Mogami.
I mean, this is like the John Holmes of microphone cables here.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I'd just
It's
like
German.
to say how nice he is to his guests.
So that mic cable sounds pretty good, man. But
It
as
does
we
it.
were pointing out earlier,
It
musicians,
makes me
great
sound
musicians sound
great.
pretty good too.
Yeah, great musicians do sound better than mic cables.
So Jamie, I like to have you kind of fill in some of the gaps on my long-winded intro there.
I'm good at filling in the
And
gaps.
I've got a good
Speaking of
twist
John
for you.
Holmes.
I got a good twist for you. Speaking of John Holmes.
Sorry.
What did starting out in recording smell like to you?
Oh, it smelled like fear. It's the worst cologne ever. I remember my first tracking session, I wanted to be anywhere else because I was just in the midst of a giant flop sweat. And then I was like, just sat back and listened. I was like, wait, I have this under control. And it was all gravy from there. It was great.
That was your first engineer tracking session, right?
Yeah, and I was an intern. It was for Capitol Records. When I'm an intern and the engineer got sick, this is how you get your first job, kids. And I was ready to take over. I had done the setup the night before. The engineer, who was a dear friend of mine, actually, he was in the hospital with heart problems. And it was just stress-induced heart issues, but he called in, said he couldn't do it. And there I was. I got the gig.
So training you as an intern was that stressful?
No, yeah. it was Capitol Records. At the time, it was called Liberty Records. And the song we recorded that day went on to be number 3.
So basically, you just don't mess around.
Dude, that was so
Do you like how
lucky.
I kept my language clean there,
That
too?
was good. You said mess
I had to
instead of...
pause myself. Boop. Well, so that's interesting because I totally remember the first sessions that I got to do as a first engineer being so nervous. Like the night before, I couldn't do anything else.
Oh, you have those nightmares of you can't sleep because you're setting up eternally and then you're in your dreams and then you wake up.
Yeah, and like you
do
try
it all over again.
You try and do other things or interact with people the night before. Like I had a girlfriend at the time. I couldn't interact. It was just like, I might as well. If it was a one-day session, I needed 2 days.
Is that
engineering disorder?
That's great. The jokes are flowing today, kids.
All right, we're just getting started, rock stars. All right, so let's back up a little bit more. So tell us a little bit more about starting out. You know, we went to school. You came out of school. You had some pretty hilarious stories about, I don't know, obviously we can't share names on this one, but I remember you telling a story once of being in a situation where you had like, let's just say there was maybe an artist who had come in who thought that a recording session involved a lot more than just music.
Oh, yeah.
And
her initials were... we'll tuck her name away a little bit, so I won't say what her name was. But, okay, so my second professional gig... Actually, my first professional mix gig. This was before the tracking of that other record. I was supposed to be mixing 3 songs for the 10... I can't mention, not mentioned, a female artist who started out when she was only 16. Anyway, she was on the same record label, and I was supposed to mix 3 songs for a box set coming out. And at like 2 a.m, she came in. People pronounced her first name, which I can't mention, and she screamed the proper pronunciation. It was a hard A versus soft A kind of thing, and she screamed her proper pronunciation into their ears. Then she threw up in the corner. The whole session smelled like cheese, and she left.
Wow. That's pretty intense, man.
Yeah, and I didn't get credit on the box sets, even though my mixes are on there.
I've never even heard that story, actually.
Yeah. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I was thinking of a different story.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's awesome. No, you had one where like somebody came in and there was a little pile of white stuff on the tape machine or something.
I definitely.
Like, what's this?
The other story was about, can I say her name?
You can say
Tanya Tucker. Okay. This story, I definitely, it was a songwriter who had just come off a very, very large album with Eric Clapton. And he'd written Eric's kind of comeback songs and the year before. And anyway, he'd started drinking about 9 a.m, and he did about 10 o'clock in the morning. He started doing the John Lennon thing where he laid on the floor to do vocals. That's how scaunched he was. They were just drinking wine. And then, midnight or so, I go over to the analog tape machine. This is how far back it was. And I'm like, what is all this dust doing here? So I just wiped it off into the garbage can. And he comes in and he goes, where's my stuff, man? I'm like, your suitcase is over, your briefcase is over there. No, man, my stuff. I'm like, I don't know. What are you looking for? Your lyric sheets? I don't know. My stuff. And he starts pounding on the tape machine. And it was, it turns out it was cocaine. So I stopped the session. I'm 21, an intern. And he called the studio owner the next day to complain about me. And the studio owner luckily backed me up and said he would have done the same thing. And the guy wasn't allowed. He wasn't invited back to the studio. But anyway, yeah. I
remember that
so
story.
Naive.
I was like,
how do you remember that?
Because I don't know, man. I just thought that was incredibly bold of you. Like as a 21-year-old intern, you kicked this guy out of the studio. You were like, get out of here. Session's over.
Oh, I was scared. I'm 21 and I was afraid the cops were going to come in and, arrest us. And I was talking to somebody else who had done a similar thing with Richard Perry, Barbra Streisand's producer and Harry Nilsson's producer.
Okay.
You can bloop that out if you want to. Anyway, he said that he did the exact same thing. He saw some dust on the tape machine because that's where they keep the razor blades. I guess that's
right. Good point.
And he just vacuumed it up. And the producer came back and was just pissed.
That's so hilarious.
And yeah, this is during. Yeah. Anyway, interesting stories. We had a good laugh because it was the same thing. I'm sure it's happened to other people.
Well, my mixing console came out of Criteria where it lived in all through the 70s. And the guys who I got it from, he told me a story about replacing the leather armrest. And he said when they took the old one off, there was like almost a 1/4 ounce of pot that just rolled out and fell on the ground from all the joints that had been rolled along the edge of the console.
And all the seeds, did you have a bunch of seeds in there?
Yeah, I think it was. I was a little disappointed that he got rid of it before I got the console, but hey,
that's a different that's a whole second industry for you. Don't you?
Really.
By the way, It's weird calling you Lidge because I always knew you as Eli.
I know, dude. I know.
You went from, his name's Elijah, so he used to use the first part of his name, then he went to the middle, and pretty soon it's just going to be
No, it's so yeah. Just move forward one letter, right?
Lidge, and then
I'll have to go through Ija, but I get to end out my life as Ja.
Oh, okay, good.
Or maybe just
I was definitely going to bring this until I forgot, and then I definitely wasn't going to bring it, but the Enormous Richard CD that I found
man, that's
in
right.
the CD bin back in like 1993 that I had you sign. It's
Dude,
still
you
on
made
my
my
shelf.
day, man.
It's still on my shelf. You're
so
awesome.
Rockstars, you've heard about Enormous Richard because I had Chris King on the show, and the CD, I think it was Answers All Your Questions. Was that the one, or was it Warm Milk?
No, it was Warm Milk on the
Porch?
Front Porch.
Right. So
I would have known that even if you didn't tell me.
You know your
I'm a
record
fan.
collection.
Yeah.
We'll have to come back to that too because your record collection is pretty impressive.
Why, thank you.
And your mic cable.
Thank you.
But Rockstars, yeah. So I remember like back in class in school, and Jamie walks in. He's like, "Hey, man, I found your record, and I bought it up in Ohio."
Cleveland.
Yeah, in Cleveland. And you actually said you thought it sounded good, and I was like, "Holy shnikes! You really thought it sounded good? Thank you, man."
You didn't like it because the guy who mixed it had just recently discovered a limiting amplifier was your word.
Really?
I remember
thought
that.
I mixed it.
Maybe there's the mastering guy.
It was like an 8-track cassette or something too.
Maybe it was the mastering guy.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
He discovered a limiting compressor or limiting amplifier.
Yeah, I don't want to be limited. I don't want to be limited. All right, so Jamie, I like to ask guests on the show to share an inspirational quote to kind of kick us off. You got anything get us psyched about hitting the studio?
Yeah, this one comes from my mom, and her inspirational quote was, "Get that finger out of your nose."
I thought you were going to say like, "Get out of bed."
No, this may be cliched. I don't know. It's Joe Meek, right?
Oh, yeah.
If it sounds right, it is right. I love that.
Can you kind of give us a little bit of the Jamie Tate brief history of Joe Meek, who he is, why he's important?
He was this interesting cat back in England in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s. He worked for, I think it was EMI, as just an engineer. And then he kind of developed his own sound, this heavily modified, heavily squashed, lots of tape delay kind of sound. And then he went independent. I think he may have been the first independent producer. He set up shop in he had a flat on Holloway Road in London. I've actually been in there. Anyway, he was somewhat schizophrenic. Some would say completely psychotic. There's this great movie about him. It's called Telstar. It's a great flick.
Do you know that there's a mural painting of him in East Nashville?
Really?
Yeah, there's a place, Fond Object, I think is the store. Oh. And they've just got like a whole mural of Joe Meek right on the side.
That's way cool.
And it says something like, like trust your ears or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Listen.
He did this great record called Telstar. I mean, most of the stuff he did was absolute just cheese, but he had horrible musical taste and was pitch deaf. I have many of his CDs though, and he's humming demos. He tried to write songs, and they go something like this. La, 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 and somehow they got songs out of those. But Telstar is this great instrumental song, and he recorded it. And years later, like 94 or something, they came out with these Joe Meek compressors.
Yeah.
Right, which I have.
And did they have anything to do with Joe Meek? Or?
No. Some guy who claimed he once sang for him, who he didn't. It was later disproven, but it was just a marketing gimmick. But anyway, I started collecting the CDs and stuff, and the stuff was just really interesting, even though it was cheeseball. I was a huge fan of Jack Joseph Puig at the time. He did this Jellyfish record, Spilt Milk. I still think it's my favorite record ever made. But I called him at the time. The first Tonic record had just come out, and I called Jack, and he was very gracious. He talked to me for about 2 hours, and I asked him if there's any new gear that I should be looking at. And he said the first Joe Meek compressor had just been released, and he said, "Get that, it's really cool." So I bought one, and I have like serial number 10 or something. So
now I remember that you were using, I mean, like literally right behind your head. If I was to take a shot of you with my phone right now, in fact, Rockstars, I'll do it and I'll include it on this. I
have show notes, 40 channels of Joe Meek.
He's got his Joe Meek's like right behind his head. There it is. Nice. Live action photography right here on the podcast.
Do I get royalties on that picture?
So yeah, the Joe Meek stuff sounds great. I've been using the plugins too, even just like the compressor and the EQ both sound really cool.
Yeah, they're interesting.
And I like to slam the compressor.
And I had at the NAMM show, I just won a Grammy for something, and the guy who owns at the time who owned Joe Meek. Well, he still does. Alan Hyatt from PMI Audio. Really great guy. He caught wind of it and offered me an endorsement deal.
Nice.
To which I got all these things really cheap. And Alan, I have not sold a single unit. I still use them all, just to let you know.
And then he was like, Jamie, I just need you to memorize this brief history of Joe Meek so that you can use it.
EQ magazine at the time,
podcast.
they did a whole issue on Joe Meek, and I studied it.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you for sharing that. That was cool. Now let's kind of spin it forward a little bit and then spin it back. How's that?
Ooh.
So you've done a ton of stuff, man. I like that you mentioned a Grammy of something as if like you
that was not a name drop. It was
you get so many Grammys you don't remember which one it was, right? But you've done a lot of stuff. Let's kind of spin it back and humanize it a little bit. Not everything's been roses for you. So would you like to share kind of a story about an important failure for you along the way?
Okay. Yeah, I have. Again, I won't mention names, but you people would recognize these names. I was supposed to mix an album. Well, it was a country duo and someone who was very famous for being famous. She had a reality show and was in a movie, something Hazards of Dukes or something like that. Anyway, she was doing a country record, and the country duo who was working on their very last record before they split. Both of those I was supposed to mix, and the record label got wind that I still use analog gear and a console. Oh, how dreadful that would be. And they said, we don't want him to do that. We would rather somebody mix it in the box. We don't care, just as long as they mix it in the box. Obviously, these are people who don't know right from wrong or up from down.
By somebody, they meant the A&R guy there at the label.
A&R guy heard, he writes something on gear sluts or some other crap like that where, you can only mix in the box now because analog is passé. People, they're so scared. They don't know. They ride the fads. That's all this industry is. So anyway, I tore out my reception area in the studio, did about $30,000 worth of sound treatment and absorption, and bought about $250,000 worth of gear to buy a big giant mouse called a DigiDesign. What is it?
The D-Control?
D-Control, D-Command. I don't know. I have a D-Control and a D-Command, and I can't remember which is which. I have one in each room. I have 3 rooms here.
It's the $100,000 mouse, right?
Oh, yeah. So I put that in, being scared that I wasn't going to be able to work anymore. And then that fad quickly passed. And now it's like people who work on records must use analog consoles, and people who mix in the box are just working on demos. I don't know if that's true anymore, but that's how it was back then. It flip-flopped. So I never quite got on there, but it scared the crap out of me. And I lost those 2 giant gigs.
Well, I remember that era because I was here making a record with you when that was happening. You were just building out the room.
Yeah. And
you said that it was that story about like how you have to be in Pro Tools to be doing it right. And so you were like,
but back then I was still on Radar. So you
were Radar, but mixing through the console. Why don't you talk about your mix setup maybe then and even now?
I have it's an Otari console, but it's API designed. The EQ is just beautiful sounding, which is why I got the console. Has 96 moving faders, has 2 EQ sections per fader, one for the channel, one for the mix path. It's a really easy console to get around. It's very, very flexible. You can route anything anywhere. And I've just been using it for, since 1997.
Yeah. Now, you didn't buy this console when it was first designed.
No, it was like $200,000 when it first came out. I got it from Belmont for $30,000. They were getting rid of it. That was 12 years ago when I opened this place. And now there was one on eBay for $4,000. So
wow.
Remember when I said previously everybody wants to mix analog? That fad has passed also. Nobody wants analog consoles.
Fads come and go. Yeah. Whatever's happening. Actually, the real rule about fads is whatever just passed, get on eBay and pick up every single one of them when they're dirt cheap.
That's a good idea.
Because they're going to come back again.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. I remember when we were first starting out in like late 90s, Neve 1073s were just starting to come back, right?
Yeah. You can get them for $1,500. Now they're worth $7,000 each. Crazy.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I should have kept mine.
You sold it?
I had a 1079.
Oh.
I had to, pay my mortgage.
I've only sold one piece of gear ever.
Really?
Yeah.
What was it?
Well, I don't want to. I didn't like it, so I'd rather not. But it was a very expensive 2 compressor.
All right.
And I sold it because I didn't like it, so I bought another very expensive compressor that worked better for my work.
Nice.
So.
Another Joe Meek, maybe.
Yeah. No.
Well, cool. So, how about sharing sort of a kind of an aha moment for you along the way? I mean, I guess going to Pro Tools and back to analog. Maybe part of the aha moment was I see you got Pro Tools going now and you've got your console still. how are you mixing now? What's your...
it's same as everybody else who you still uses a console. It's a hybrid. I'm using more and more plugins as I go. I have a bunch of outboard analog gear that I've collected over the years, and I'm using less and less of it. The main thing, I doubt I'll ever give up my console just because I like, when I'm mixing, I usually have 7 or 8 fingers going at once.
Yeah.
I like that intuitive thing where I just grab a knob. I don't have to click on a mouse. And there's something about, I know this has been debated to death. This might not even be interesting to anybody, but there's something about a console, the way it sounds, blah, blah, blah. I just think hitting it hard going in, there's something that it all meshes together and it has this light fuzz of this sheen of distortion and haze over it that makes it more movie-like. I don't know.
And there's something nice about the high end and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
Do you listen while you're mixing directly to the output of the console, or do you listen to sort of a digital capture of your mix while you're mixing?
No, I don't. I should. I used to listen through my 2-track. I used to mix through a master link, like all of us did through those ages. And now I print back the 2 tracks of Pro Tools just so it's always there. It's always there with the session. But yeah, I don't, and I should. I don't know why. I listen without compression until the very last.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That was one of the things you told me when I was hanging out with you, and I kind of remember I came and had lunch with you and really just kind of asked you a bunch of questions about stuff. But you said that you like to wait on the compression.
Yeah.
Until you
so mixing is kind of, I love tracking and I'm really good at it, but mixing is kind of my forte. It's why I get out of bed every morning and go to work happy, because I really, really, honestly, truly love mixing. So when I'm mixing, I get it so I don't have to move a fader, and it's a good mix from the top of the song to the bottom of the song. And I will, if it takes me 4 hours to do a mix, 3.5 of that will be getting my first pass of fader movements. Before I even start automation, I'll work and work and work until that, just that flat, rough, no fader movement mix is damn near perfect. And then I kick in automation. I do 1 pass typically for the instruments, guitar rides, that kind of stuff. And then I'll do 1 pass of vocal rides, and then I'll put my compressors in, and then I'll do 1 final pass of vocal rides. And then I'll listen and listen and listen, and then I'll, maybe do 1 more pass of tweaks, and that's it.
Nice. Well, so Pro Tools is kind of acting like a tape machine.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear you talk about it like that. I remember you used to mix from radar through the console. When we were here, I remember you also telling me about, you would do these high-speed sessions where you might have to mix 7 songs in a day. And
that was my whole life for 15 years.
I think Nashville, you said it took you like 45 minutes to get a mix.
Yeah, Nashville's a publishing town. And when I wasn't working on masters, everybody here in town, no matter who you are, works on publishing demos. And they sound just like records, but, you're mixing 5 or 6 a day. And they're glorified rough mixes. But I've had publishing demos go #1.
Yeah.
Without me even remixing them. In fact, the Taylor Swift stuff,
yeah,
those are my publishing demo mixes. So I really wish, I begged the record label to let me remix them. And they go, no, they're great. I begged them. They didn't want to. So, oh well. Don't listen to those. Just don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's too bad that her career never took off as a result of your mixes.
But I was like 24 at the time. I was just a scared little dude. No, don't listen to those. I don't know what the hell I was under pressure.
Oh, man. Well, congratulations on that, and congratulations on all your successes. I know you've won a Grammy or Grammys and an Emmy as well. You want to tell any of those
They're
stories?
In my closet at home. I can prove it. Yeah, they are. I have gold records and platinum records in my closet at home. I just don't like them.
Not enough wall space.
Yeah, right. I like wallpaper better. No, I just don't. It's very self-congratulatory. I hate that crap.
Do you? I love it.
And it tends to date you. It tends to date you. I'm looking right now. There's one on the floor over there. It's the Newsboys. It's like, I know it's triple platinum now, but I have one. It's literally sitting on the floor behind a bass guitar and an old mandolin.
I mean, there could be something to the fact that when a client walks into a studio and they see an old record, in some cases they get turned on. In other cases, they may want to know what you're doing now or something.
But this is Nashville, and it's so image-driven, modern country, corporate Nashville, that if you weren't on the last whatever record, then you're not hip. So
really,
yeah.
So just put the last whatever record up on your wall.
I do. I have them, but they're in the office. I have 3 million. 2 plaques of 3 million sales for Thomas Rhett. How's that for a name drop, kids?
Nicely done.
It's in the office because it's embarrassing to me. but I guess I proudly say it on the podcast. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you do a lot of country music, and you know, country is what it is in Nashville. But I know that your music listening collection is old Beatles records.
So we're going on there.
Yeah, let's go there for a sec. Let's talk about your home.
I had a record or CD on every horizontal surface in our house, and my wife and I had to move. So we designed a house. I showed the architect pictures of Abbey Road Studio 2, and I said, I want that with a house attached to it. So that's what I have.
Nice.
And the wall, it's like 30 by 30 with a bookshelf with one of those cool library ladders.
That's why all your shots on Facebook are like taken from the stairs looking down into the living room.
Because I have this stupidly large record collection. I'm just a music fan, man. I love music. I study it. I don't know if I'm a scholar, but the stuff I know really well. I know every aspect of it. I know every sound on, every Yes record and Beatles record. I know who produced it, who engineered it. I know, all that kind of stuff. Who mastered it, all that. I'm just a fan. And
what'd you listen to this past week?
This past week, I'm on a Kevin Gilbert kick. I don't know if you guys remember him from Toy Matinee, nice. Before that, I was on a Jellyfish kick again. But I am a fan of it, which kills me because nowadays nobody has liner notes.
Right.
I'm still old. I buy either the vinyl or the CD, and nobody else does that. And there are no liner notes. We don't get credit. I want to know who made this record that I have, that I love. I want to know who mixed it. I'm curious about that kind of stuff.
Do you see any solutions for that coming down the pipeline?
Man, when you buy stuff, shouldn't you get like some sort of digital booklet with it? Don't they do that on iTunes? I don't know. I've never bought a download, but I have bought some stuff off of HD Tracks, right? They sell the 2496, 24192 stuff, which is a whole nother story. I don't want to get in the high res stuff because I think it's woo-woo, but they don't even give you liner notes. You're paying $18 for a damn download, and you don't get liner notes. You get like this low resolution picture.
Hopefully they put the song title in there so at least you know which one you got.
Yeah. And it's in damn FLAC, so you have to convert it. But anyway.
Well, it would be cool to see all of that come back somehow. I've heard rumors of it.
So have I. There have been petitions by the Angry 7 engineers who are trying to right the ship, but those guys who are always in the magazines. We call them the Angry 7 or Angry 8.
7.
You know what I'm talking about? Massenburg and those cats. They're trying to right the ship, but I don't know if it's...
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anybody could do it, maybe they can.
Yeah.
I was just having a conversation with somebody about a new company called Dart Music, which I think is setting out to try and, recapture metadata and make sure that there's all kinds of information embedded in music, which could be a really cool thing.
Yeah. Then you switch it to Wave and you lose all that metadata. It's bad. Like MP3 and ACC and even Apple Lossless and FLAC, they keep all that intact, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But, Wave doesn't. I don't know. It's cool. A lot of people don't understand. That's a big issue. A lot of people don't understand MP3, AAC, FLAC. They just don't understand that.
Enlighten us. Give us the quick version.
MP3. I had a #1 hit in Canada. The only version that the record company ever got from me, even though I offered the actual WAV file, is the MP3. I emailed them for a mix approval. And when the greatest hits came out, they mastered that MP3.
Wow.
Can you believe that? And here's me going out of my way to contact the record label and say, I have the actual real WAV file, the 24-bit WAV file. Never responded.
And I'll sell it to you for $5.
Yeah. And they did pay their bills, so they weren't trying to, avoid me. It was strange, but.
Well, that's pretty intense, man. Well, so yeah, Rockstars, the WAV file is the high-res version. You can typically 16-bit 44.1 on a CD, but it can be 24, 48, 24, 96, whatever you want it to be.
And FLAC and Apple Lossless are just data compressed versions of that. They're lossless too. So when they uncompress, when you unpack it, you get the full waveform. Yeah. Full wave file, not waveform.
So those sound best.
Yeah, they sound this. Yeah. That's the way you should be trading your files.
And MP3s. What about a 320 MP3?
That sounds great, but it's still data compressed. It's an end. What do they call that? Nothing more can be done with it because I forgot there's a term that the scientists use, but that is the last thing you can do with that particular file. You have to go back to the waveform. You can't make an MP3 from that 320 MP3 because it'll sound chirpy.
Interesting.
Because even though it's a high bit rate MP3, it's still, 3/4 of the data has still been thrown away.
When we were in school, I was a member of AES at the time. And I remember coming in and sitting in on meetings, and they were discussing this new thing that was coming down the pipeline called an MP3.
Yeah, I remember
that. It was just being invented, and they were talking about how it was a format that would basically figure out what frequencies were masked by the frequencies that were there. And if they were masked, it meant you didn't hear them, so you didn't need them anymore.
They told us it was inaudible. Oh, no, it was the mini disc. The guys from Sony came and played the mini disc, and they said it was inaudible from the CD. So they tried to trick us, and they played us 10 audio clips. We had to guess if it was the CD or the mini disc, which is basically MP3, I think.
What do we guess?
I got 100 right. I got them all right.
Nice.
And they were going, how are you doing this? I'm going, you can hear the top end chirp. They hadn't had the codec down at that point. Yeah. Now it sounds okay, but.
That's funny, yeah. Well, we certainly get used to it. And it sounds, I guess an MP3 sounds about as good as my Bluetooth does.
Well, you know what? That's how I send out mixes for approval. MP3. Yeah. MP3 to me. That's the only thing they hear now.
So let's flip it back to a little older technology. I know you're a big fan of vinyl.
Ooh,
what do you want to say about your listening with your turntable and all that? And what you like about it all?
I love my vinyl record player. And it's vinyl, not vinyls. The plural of vinyl is okay. Yeah, I have a bunch of records. Okay. No, I love my turntable. I have this generous setup, blah, blah, blah. I spend a lot of money, and I have a lot of records.
Is it true that the technology that you had to spend money on for your home listening stereo is more expensive than the technology you have to spend on for professional recording?
My turntable was 30 grand. I don't know. My cartridge was $5,000. My tone arm was $5,500. My preamp was $5,000. $5,000. Yeah, the cartridge was $5,500. My tone arm was $5,000. My preamp was $5,000. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I even had this cool vinyl vacuum record cleaning machine where you squirt it and scrub it. And
nice.
Yeah.
What about your speakers at home?
At home, I have Genlex.
Well, that same kind you have here?
1030,
no, these are the big ones, or these are smaller?
These are the Genlex 8050s. I replaced my 1031s with 8050s.
Yeah, you used to have the big guys in here.
Yeah, they're the same size. It's just the newer model.
Okay.
Yeah, I have Genlex at home, and a pair of what I mostly listen to are Sennheiser HD600 headphones. They're great. Go out and check them out. They used to be $400. I don't know. They're like $200 now. Go check them out. They're exceptional.
Well, I remember the first time I ever mixed on the little Genlex, I was just confused. I didn't know what to do with them. But then when I worked with you here and you had these big self-powered ones, they really sounded great.
Yeah, that's all I've ever used. I heard AES show in 1992 or 93. I walked in to the Genlex booth, and they had all the Genlex speakers stacked up in this pyramid shape. And they're playing Toy Matinee record, which I love. And it sounded great in there. And, you know, they're kind of baiting you. They're like, okay, so which speakers are playing? And they pointed up to the teeny tiny little ones that was filling the whole room with this enormous, lovely sound. So I went out and bought a pair, and I've been happy ever since.
Nice.
So,
what's your takeaway on monitors? Because, I mean, I know a lot of different mixing engineers might use different
some guys
monitors.
use stuff that just sounds absolutely dreadful to me. And some guys, I don't know, it's whatever you're used to.
Have you found that mostly it's like whatever you get used to just allows you to make the right decisions?
That's right, as long as you know it. I mix on Genlex 8050s, very low volume. I mean, you could fart and it would cover up the music until that very last play when I put my compressors in. Then I listened to it, 90 dB or so. Still nothing that would slick your hair back. But most of the time, I'm listening to that, and I have a pair of old NS10s off to my left, stacked one on top of each other, and that's where I do about 70% of my work, because that's how most people are going to hear it. Mm-hmm. In the next room with it playing, you're not going to have that perfect stereo image. You're going to be off to one side. You're going to be in the kitchen washing your dishes or something.
Right, you got one NS10 laying this way with the tweeter on the left, and the other one's on top with the tweeter to the right. That was
just for design purposes.
And it just gives you sounds like mono, too.
Yeah, it's my mono stack, but I don't push the mono button, so I don't get all that phase cancellation.
Right,
so, my reverbs don't go away in that, but it's still mono. That's how I mix. And I found that I get a wider stereo mix because of that. Because they're stacked on top of each other, whatever's panned in the center sounds louder.
Right.
Because, it's the 3 dB gain when you double it. So I kind of mix that back a little bit, whatever's up center, and I mix what's left and right a little hotter. When I move it over to my Genlex, which are right in front of me, it's this really wide stereo image. It's
right,
cool.
And the stuff that's on the pan to the sides that's just been pushed hotter sounds initially maybe a little bit louder than you expect.
Yeah, I usually have to, I compromise from there on, but it gives me a good starting point. I like really wide stereo mixes. When I'm panning stuff, it's either up center, hard left, or hard right, and there's no in between. The pinpoint stuff just sounds better to me.
Now talk about mixing at the low volume while you're working on your Genlex.
So
What's the point of that?
I saw Bob Clearmountain. He was working on something, and I just happened to be in the studio, and I've always loved his work. I'm a huge fan of his. And he was mixing about that soft on NS10s. And he said, I was rude and I interrupted, He was very
You
generous.
farted in this control room and covered up the mix. Like,
Yeah, he was very generous. He said, if everything sounds good loud, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So I tried it. I had to really, really train myself hard to mix low. And now it's just, I can't mix loud anymore. I mean, I mix quietly, like this quiet, very low. So.
And have you gone back and listened to some of your favorite records of that volume 2 and discovered that they also sounded great?
No, Clear Mountain, Chris Lord-Alge, those guys, they have mixed chops for days. Their records just sound great.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what speaker you listen to them on. That doesn't matter what volume. They just know how to hold stuff together.
Yeah.
I'm such a huge admirer of. Well, let me throw out some names. Okay, so there's this guy Bob St. John. He did. Remember the band Extreme? He did this record called it's Extreme's third record. 3 sides of every story. It had this when it came out in '93. I spent the entire day in my dorm room listening to this record over and over and. I'd never heard drum sounds like that before. It blew my mind. Now he and I are friends on Facebook. The internet's a wonderful place for that kind of stuff. He's this delightfully charming man, and he's been very kind. But he's since, kind of told me how he did it all. But it's this beautiful record. And then Chris Lord-Alge, I worship everything he does. I recently got to a co-mixed record with him. I mixed 6 songs. He mixed 6. And it was just quite an honor to
do we get to know what record that is yet?
Oh. Yeah, Justin Moore, last Justin Moore record.
Okay, cool. And that's already out, so we can I can link to that.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, right. I'm really proud of those mixes. I didn't record it. Some of the recordings are just because you spend a lot of money at an expensive studio does not mean your records will sound good. Or some of those mixes I had to really work with the tones to get them to stand up. It doesn't sound the same as if I would have recorded the tracks, but I'm proud of the mixes. The balances are right.
So let's talk about that for a sec. You've got this beautiful studio here. The drum set's in the same place it was last time I was here. Yeah. I even see the same SM58 in the same spot, I think. And there's a thing that you've dialed in your studio where you know how to get a sound. What do you have to say, or what do you want to talk about that ability to kind of record and mix and sort of dial it in like that versus getting stuff in from elsewhere and mixing it?
Actually, I love mixing stuff from. I love mixing stuff from other studios because it's a challenge. Some of it is brilliantly recorded, but most records are made by, the producer recording at home now. There aren't professional engineers recording these records. It's
home studios.
It's the guitarist doing the guitars. It's the producer doing the vocals in his house. And I'm talking major label stuff. This isn't just, project studio stuff or indie stuff. It's a challenge to get some of these sounds to stand up in a mix, but it's cool, man. It makes you a better mixer. And some of those mixes are actually my favorite ones I've ever done because I had to really push my abilities and listen more intently than if it was something I recorded. So it's cool. I love it. But one thing I've noticed, not many people know how to record a kick drum. Right. I can tell how good the tracks are going to sound by listening to the kick drum. Because most people put the kick mic too far out of the drum. Put it in the damn drum.
I remember when I brought you the record that I had recorded, the kick drum you mixed sounded great. And one of the things you said you were doing is, it always stuck with me. You said you were pulling about up to 12 dB of 250 right out of it. And it kind of gave it that thing.
Do that cut, sweep around somewhere, 250, 300, 400, somewhere in there. When you do that cut and sweep around those frequencies, you'll hear right when it tightens up. All of a sudden you get this nice solid thung, this thud with a nice top end and a nice bottom end.
My theory is that that's the resonant frequency inside the drum, and that's why it builds up.
You can't record a kick drum without taking that stuff out. Toms are the same way. You have to. There's a dip in the lower mids you have to make for them to stand up and sound solid. Mm-hmm. Honestly, when I record drums, I do that dip in the kick drum. I do that dip on the toms just to make them solid and not flabby. And everything else I record I don't compress drums to tape. I think that's inconsiderate to the mix guy, because it leaves them less options. Mm-hmm. I'm usually the mix guy, but in case it's going somewhere else, I want to be, polite and let him do his thing to it. I don't EQ, guitars, 57 to a mic pre. Just stick it in the right spot. You have a beautiful sounding electric.
Do you like compression on a guitar mic?
When I mix.
When you mix, but not when you're cutting?
1176. I actually get down on all fours. I have them put white noise through their guitar amp. I move my ear around until I find the spot where it sounds the best. I put my finger there and then I move the mic right in front of it. And that's how I mic a guitar. It's never
So,
failed me.
You put your ear in the right spot, but wait, aren't you blowing your ear up, or do you?
It's just they're blowing white noise. I have them unplug their guitar, but put their volume, their volume pedal up. So it's just
interesting.
yeah,
wow.
and you can move your ear around, and you'll hear where is a nice balance. And if it's off to one side, you have that comb filtered sound because sound's coming from one side of the speaker, and you're closer to the other side of the speaker. You have these delays coming at so the sound is from the left side of the speaker is traveling further than the right. I don't want to get into all that, but there's a comb filtered sound on guitar mics. I just hate, and there's no way to get around it. It's just going to sound like crap.
So, but if you use your ear and find that sweet spot, that's where it all kind of comes into focus.
Just use a 57. That's what I mean, you can use whatever you want. Use a 57, turn it up. Great, done.
Great. What an awesome tip, man.
And I'm not a big fan of ribbon mics because all ribbon mics I've ever used sound broken because the first thing you do is have to reach for an EQ.
Right.
They're
brighten it up or something.
Yeah, right. Why would I want to use something why would I want to pay for something that sounds like that?
That's like making a tape machine and forgetting to put in the pre-emphasis EQ in the circuit or something. So that might have been a little bit too esoteric, rock stars.
Well, I want to actually, since we're on ribbon mics, so overhead mics are used to get shimmer and sheen and clarity. And then people use ribbon mics, which are the antithesis of shimmer and shine and clarity. And when you use a ribbon mic on the overheads, you know what you're doing? You're recording the ceiling as much as you are the drum set because they're figure eight. I just want to throw that out there. Continue what you're doing. Okay.
All right, rock stars. Well, if you got a ribbon mic, you don't have to throw it away just yet, but
no, don't.
Well, so let me see here. Let's jump into some stories about your studio too. So, you took over a big facility, and I'd like to think that you were still pretty young when you chose to do that. Can you talk about the process of making that huge leap with a business decision and the risk involved, and just tell us the story about going into that decision and doing that?
I was working for a guy who literally down the street. We're in Berry Hill. It's a very consolidated area of studios. There's probably more studios in this 1 square mile than any other area in the world. But so he was actually Pantera's dad. He hit a retirement age, and we were literally booked every day for a year and a half. And one day I handed the mixes to the client. I said, "See you next time." And the owner was standing there at the edge of the console and said, "That's it. Studio is closed." And I'm like, "We have 2 tracking sessions tomorrow starting at 10. He goes, "That's it. Studio's closed. I've already canceled all our clients." So the next day I went out and called all the clients, told them to hold still, and I went out and got bank loans for this place.
Wow.
So I had to. I didn't want to own a studio. It's a stupid decision. Don't own a studio. It's crazy.
But even the concept of getting bank loans, I got to admit, that's pretty scary, man.
God. And I'm about as qualified to run a business as I am to do open heart surgery. It's
well, let's hope my heart holds out during this interview here.
So when I was getting the bank loans, they said, "What are you going to call this place?" And I said, "Mighty Ass Recording." Mighty Ass Recording. And they go, "Not with our money, you're not."
Wow, really?
So that's why I found Rukkus Room. And they're like, "Oh, we love that. That's great."
I'm naming the studio Unpaid Bills. Isn't that a good idea?
I also had a name called Enormix, which I'm so happy I didn't choose.
Enormix. Okay, the Rukkus Room. So you go in now. How were you able to get? I mean, we don't have to get too deep into financial details, but assuming that most people listening go, "How the hell am I ever going to get a bank to give me a loan for something?"
This was different times. This is 12 years ago before the industry crashed, right? The industry crashed 5-6 years ago. The landscape is completely, almost 100% different now. This is Nashville, and they were used to this. There's a bank down on Music Row that was used to handling these kind of loans, and they were perfectly accepting of me wanting to start a studio, especially when I had enough bookings in the book. Is that right? Bookings in the, you know what I mean? Sessions booked in the book. That's redundant.
Bookings in the book is exactly what it took.
Yeah.
Wow.
Woo! That was awesome. We should write a song. Don't nobody use that. And they to pay off all the loans. I already had the bookings to pay off all the loans. So
wow, that's cool. So you were able to just show, that you'd done the due diligence, or you had a business plan that looked legit.
And I had clients come in. And in Nashville, it's strange. If you go into this, I don't know if it's the same way, but if you're a songwriter and have a song on the charts, you can go into a bank, show them the Billboard chart, and they will give you a bank loan based on the chart position.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
No, I've never heard that. I love it.
So that they were used
Great
to this.
stories.
They were very, very nice to me.
Have you known anybody else? Well, I guess that's an example of somebody else doing something kind of similar, but have you known other people who were able to get a loan and open a studio based on, the promise of the work that was coming in?
There were several other guys. We all worked for different studios, and then when we went independent, there was one other guy. He did the same thing, and it was successful at it.
That's great.
So,
very cool, man. Well, thanks for telling that story.
and it's a small community here. We're all friendly. We all know each other's business in a good way, and it's a very supportive community. And the other guy I'm talking about, we were very supportive. He's now doing live sound. He had enough of the dealing with the record labels, which is a whole nother story.
Are you mostly doing work with labels, or do you also work with independent artists?
I almost quit the business 2 years ago, last year, a year and a half ago, somewhere in there. Make up your own minds. I don't care. I was tired of dealing with record labels. It's the blind leading the blind, and people who don't know any better telling you how to do your job better. Everybody wants to be a producer and a mix engineer now.
Everybody wants to be the one who shows up and changes everything.
Yeah. I was getting notes, mix fixes to change stuff, raise the third tambourine hit in the second chorus half a dB. Okay, thank you. Now it's a hit.
Right.
And there was one particular record. It was the Last Straw record, and even if I told you the name of the record,
The Last Straw.
It's something very similar because the artist and the producer had enough, and they named it something like The Last Straw, but it's not that. I won't say the record, but I almost quit the industry because there was so much bureaucracy involved in making. It's just music, and they overthought everything, and they micromanaged every fader move and every snare hit, and then I mixed the record, and the night before it was going to be mastered in New York City at 11:30 at night, I got the president of the label sent me his mix changes. And one of the mix changes was, will you please put the kick pattern on this song back to the original way the drummer played it? I'm like, does he not understand what mixing is? I pull up the fader. I don't change the pattern. I mean, this is a real drummer. They're acoustic drums. I'm not changing they're not programmed.
That's funny. Wow.
And he micromanaged everything. The previous record, he micromanaged everything on one song, right? And we had to re-record the drums 3 times. We had to re-record the bass, had to re-record the guitars. We spent so much time re-recording the song. And then he says, oh, can you do me a rough mix? I'm going to play it for blah, blah, blah today. It's for some television network. I go, sure. And I sent him a mix I spent like 45 minutes on. And that was the mix for the record. After micromanaging every single aspect of the song, he used my rough mix. And it did go #1.
There you go, man.
Yeah, see?
Oh, man.
It's not my
Go
best
figure.
work. It's not.
Go figure.
I hate that mix.
So how long does it take to make a great mix?
I don't know. Sometimes 45 minutes, sometimes 8 hours. It just, you have to figure out, I have this thing, you have to figure out what the song's about. It could be about the kick drum. It could be about the acoustic guitar. It could be about the damn tambourine. Who knows? Every song has something that makes it tick. And you just got to find it. So you can't use presets. If you have a drum heavy mix, it ain't going to work for the next song because it's acoustic guitar driven.
Right.
So sometimes it takes a long time for me to shuffle these faders around to find that hidden heartbeat of the song. That's pretty good, hidden heartbeat.
It is pretty good. What advice do you have for the rock stars? What advice do you have for the rock stars regarding if you don't know how long it's going to take to mix, what's the best strategy for saying how much it's going to cost to do a mix? What advice would you share about that?
Oh, I don't know. I usually charge a flat rate because of that. I don't think anybody should have to pay for me becoming so obsessive over a mix. If I charge a flat rate. So if I think the mix is done after 2 hours, it's still the same cost as if I think the mix is done in 8 hours or, 45 minutes. When the mix is done, the mix is done. There's a good mix in those tracks somewhere. And when I reach it, you have to figure out when you've reached that point, and that's difficult to do. We have our 10,000 hours in several times over. So right. I know where that is, but when it's done, I'm good. But sometimes don't tweak on it too much. My favorite mixes I've ever done are the quick ones.
What about for somebody who's maybe starting out with this, and maybe they are nervous about picking a cost that is going to be too high or something like that? Should they just start low and put the time in?
Oh man, I don't know. I generally, if there's a way to screw myself out of money, I will do it 100% of the time. So I generally ask too low, which is probably not the best. You know, I don't know how much further I'd be in my career if I asked for more money. You know, instead of asking $500 a mix, I asked $3,000. You know, I would be working a lot more on bigger projects. You know, okay, so there's this book, Freakonomics, and they had this chapter in there about the block of cheese. They cut this wheel of cheese in half, and they priced one half twice as much as the other half, and the half that was, twice as much sold out sooner. So take that.
Wow, yeah, really.
Keep that in consideration.
It's a tough one, you know.
And don't undervalue yourself. If you're good, you're good.
Yeah, true.
Charge it, right?
True. Well, it's good advice. I still am, teaching myself that advice. I've often, with the wide variety of what people want in a mix project, you still defaulted to like, well, I just kind of charge.
Yeah, whatever
hourly.
the budget allows. Yeah. They hate that answer.
Yeah,
honestly,
it doesn't help anybody.
No, you lose gigs because whatever your budget allows. You know, that puts pressure on them to negotiate. Just tell them a price, and if they say that, they will generally say, "We were thinking more like this," and go, "Okay, cool."
Yeah, that's true. That's good advice.
That's what I've found.
Yeah. All right, rock stars, take that to the bank, or not.
Don't charge too little because then they'll say he was cheap, but at least he's worth it. You know, they don't want that.
Yeah. All right, so let's dig into some mixing stuff. Let's geek out for a sec. One thing that I remember admiring about you and your mixing, I mean, your mix room looks the same to me now as it did, 12 years ago.
I've added a Stormtrooper helmet and Darth Vader helmet.
I mean, in terms of like the racks are in the same place, consoles, same place.
Yeah.
Some of the same gear, but more importantly, the patch bay, you're not pulling patches in and out every time.
Cluttered.
Everything's patched in and it stays that way. For the most part,
when
right?
I track, I can switch over from mixing to tracking in about 3 minutes because when I track, I want it to sound like the final mix. It gives the producer and client and artists something better to gauge when they have something that they like, if it sounds like the final mix. So the tracks are running through my mix processing.
What are some things that help it sound closer to a finished mix?
I don't compress drums going to tape, as they say, but coming back, I do my drum processing. I compress the snare drum, I compress the overheads, blah, blah, blah. The acoustics, blah. It just sounds like a final mix. I don't EQ much going to tape except the kick and toms. I let the microphones work for me, but you have to smash that 2-bus.
Really?
Yeah.
So the needle's moving on the 2-mix compressor?
Yeah, I mean, smash. I say 2 dB. That's me smashing it. I love compression. I'm a compression fiend.
You use it well.
Yeah, but the tighter your mix is, the more compacted you have those levels to each other, the less compression you have to do to make it more effective. I can compress a mix, a dB, or possibly a 2 dB on very loud peaks, and it sounds really compressed, And I mean that in a good way. I love the sound of compressed mixes. It's just really cool. That's why I'm such a Chris Lord-Alge fan.
Yeah.
Dense and thick.
Well, one of the things I really like about your mixes is the snare always sounds big and compressed and exciting, but it's not harsh.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of EQ on my snare drum, but okay, so here's my snare drum. I read an article about Tom Lord-Alge back in the day. He was mixing this record called Owsley. Remember him?
Mm-hmm. I think he'd actually just finished that record when I worked with him.
Really, really. It's a great record. Really great power pop. But anyway, so I have my snare drum coming in out of Pro Tools into my fader. I have that uncompressed, uneq'd snare drum going to my stereo mix. Then the insert send, I send out to a gate. I send that through a compressor. Then I send that through 1176. And then I bring that compressed and gated snare drum up on another fader and just tuck it under the uncompressed. That's why I have a nice house.
Dude, can you
I make a snare
Can you
drum
say that
sound good.
one more time?
Okay, so bring up your snare fader. Bring it up. Right. No, not too loud. Right there. Okay. All right. Hit the insert send. All right. Take a patch out of your insert send. Send that to a gate. Send that to a compressor on a slow attack fast release. Send that to an 1176. Medium fast attack fast release on like a 4 or 8 to 1. Bring that up on another fader. Tweak the high end up just a little bit. Add a little 16K, add a little 7.5K on up kind of thing. And pull that up underneath your uncompressed, and you will have a rockin' snare drum.
That's awesome. So that parallel compression is
I
doubled
totally,
up, right?
Yeah, I totally skipped over the Tom Lord-Alge part. In the article, Will Owsley was talking about how Tom had his snare drum on 3 faders. He had the attack on 1 fader, the sustain, and the release, on 2 other faders. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. I think 3 faders is a bit much. The fewer faders in front of me, the better my mix will be. But I can deal with 1. So I kind of did this parallel snare drum thing. I also have my drums and bass parallel compressed. I brought it up and voila, there's my snare sound.
Well, the cool thing about the multiple faders thing is you start to like paint them in like colors, moving them around.
Yeah. Yeah, you can just tuck it in. If you need that extra color or sustain of the snare drum or extra crack, you can just kind of tweak your attack time for it.
Yeah, it's great. Very cool, man. Thanks for that tip. What about vocals? Let's go to vocals for a sec. Share with us a cool way to treat vocals in a mix.
I like 1176s. If I had 32 1176s, I would use them all and everything. I just really like them. I have 6 channels of 1176 in my rack.
Those look like newer ones,
yeah,
right?
They're a swoop pack.
Like, who
have you ever
cares
listened to a song and go, oh God, that mix sucks. I wish they wouldn't have used the reissue 1176. Why did they use the vintage one? Nobody cares. Is the song great? Is the mix listenable? Who cares? And then when I run out of the hardware, I use the Bomb Factory.
Nice, the BF-76.
That's my bitch. I love that thing.
Yeah.
That pumps and wheezes the same way a real 1176 does.
So you're not the only one bringing up the Bomb Factory too.
Awesome. I use that, and I use the EQ whatever, EQ7, EQ3, whatever the hell comes with Pro Tools. Those are I have 20 grand worth of plugins. I use the standard bog standard ones.
Yeah.
I don't use any exotic plugin except the Abbey Road Red channel. I love that thing.
Oh yeah, I haven't messed with that yet.
Yeah, it's lovely.
The Waves Red channel.
It's lovely.
Lovely.
As my wife would say, it's beautiful.
This is what I want to ask you. Talking about tracking as if you're mixing and doing some parallel stuff. Can that be done with plugins if somebody's all in Pro Tools? Or are you going to get into some weird shit?
That's why I still use analog gear. So all my final tweaks, my final compression are the plugins, but tracking, it's all my hardware units.
Right, because you can get into some latency and phase issues if you try and parallel everything internally.
And that's another thing. Why is delay compensation not on 100% of the time?
I'm still a little bit amazed and mystified that we even have to deal with any of it. It turns off in the middle of mixes,
though. All of a sudden, I'll have a snare drum that sounds like that. I'm going, what the hell? Oh, it's delay compensation turned itself off.
Oh, yeah.
Damn you, Avid.
Yeah, I still run into weird stuff. I guess the one that catches me off guard, I have Pro Tools HDX. And when I first got it, I was recording some stuff. And then all of a sudden, I'm playing things back and it's shifted in time. And I was like, oh, my God, what's going on? Freaked me out. I was like, are you kidding? This is like the nicest rig I've ever gotten myself. And it's not recording and playing back exactly right. And I think it was because I was putting stuff on the stereo bus. So that would cause latency.
Yeah, and if you mix RTAS and TDM plugins, I still use Pro Tools 8 because it would cost a lot for me. I have HD3 systems in all 3 rooms, and it would cost me a fortune to upgrade. But if you use RTAS plugins and TDM plugins on the same track, it causes more delay to happen than if you use all RTAS or all TDM.
Well, you know what they say at all the record labels down on Music Row now?
You got to mix in the box or you're screwed.
Well, it's all Pro Tools 9.
Is it?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh. No, when it's difficult to find professional engineers as of like 2 years ago, last year, who use Pro Tools 10. If you get a PTX file, the only people with PTX systems were like rich songwriters. Everybody who was actually working, in a studio still used Pro Tools 8.
Keeps it, right. Well, I mean, the takeaway there is just that same story I hear repeatedly. It's like our job as professionals is to be consistent and reliable and do something well. So once we figure out something with what we got, it's stupid to change it.
I got a rock solid system. I'm not changing it, especially if it's going to cost me 15 grand per room.
And you offer more value to your client by just making sure that it gets recorded and plays back and mixed than
absolutely
whatever way that it gets done.
I think they come here for the jokes mostly.
You got one that you want to share? What's the most common joke you share?
I can't say it in mixed company. But I do have a popcorn machine. I think that's also a large draw, and a leg lamp from Christmas Story.
Yeah, I noticed that over there.
That some musicians like to molest while they're here.
Another live photo op here, Rockstars. I'm going to get a photo of the leg lamp in the corner of the control room there. See if I can actually get it in focus. Was that a pun, by the way, when you said I can't say that in mixed company?
Oh my God, I didn't even realize that. I'm so ashamed. I hang my head in shame for
All right, let's see. What else do I want to know? We talked about the stereo bus too.
Oh, I have on my stereo bus. Let me mention this thing.
Ahead,
I have Animod ATS1 that I use. It's the analog tape simulator. It's a delightful box.
I remember when you got that.
Did I mix Ryan's record through that?
No, you had just gotten it. You told me, you said kick drums off tape always had this fat thing, and then you got that modeling and you put it through, and there it was.
There was this My Morning Jacket record that Michael Bauer mixed, and I asked him what he used to make that kick drum splat the way it did, and I meant that in a very positive way. And he said it was, dude, I mixed analog tape. So Greg, the Pendulum Greg, guy who owns Pendulum, he and Dave Amos, who was at Bomb Factory, they started this company. They have a copy of the Fairchild. It's called Analog Modeling. And I have their Fairchild 670 copy, and I have their analog tape simulator, and I run every mix through the analog tape simulator. It's beautiful.
That's awesome.
You can buy us a digital mix. Does that not blow your mind? Oh my God, it's so cool. It puts that crunch on your kick drum. It compresses it slightly. It rolls off the edges. It takes the burrs off. It's just...
And you put it on the 2 mix, but it still treats the kick just right.
It's the very last thing before it goes into Pro Tools. I'm using it like a tape machine. It's gorgeous.
Nice,
Buy one.
Nice.
It does it better than any plugin I've ever heard, although not that I've heard all the plugins. That's just... I stopped at this one because it does everything I want.
Yeah. So, all right, let's see. What have we not talked about in your setup here that you want to talk about? Anything in particular?
Oh, I don't know what half the stuff does, so please don't ask any more questions.
Well, the console, for example, it has recall. You know, it's got built-in dynamics and EQ.
Yeah, I don't
and
use
all
those.
That
The built-in dynamics suck, but yeah, it does have total recall on it. Okay, so when I mix an album, I usually just mix it, send up mixes off, and then we have a day of recalls if there are any. And there's this one guy who actually makes me recall every song on an album, and then after I recall it, he goes, "Oh yeah, there are no fixes on that one. Move on to the next one."
He's just helping you keep your chops up.
Oh my God.
So Rockstars, once again, the hybrid mix that Jamie's doing is Pro Tools and the computer are essentially a tape machine, and you'll pull out plugins when you want to. And I'm sure you use some editing and maybe some automation if you need it.
Yeah.
Probably good for mutes, right?
Yeah. My tracks are whistle. Okay. So that's one thing I want to go into. Pro Tools. Or any DAW, not necessarily Pro Tools. I use Pro Tools. We're in Nashville. It's a Pro Tools town, and I have to be compatible with everybody. So I don't use Logic or anything else. But you use whatever the hell you want. I'm not getting that debate. PC versus Mac, who cares? Analog versus who cares? Shut up. Use whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. But when you're recording to a DAW, every edit needs a crossfade. The beginning of every sound file, if there's blank stuff, cut it off and put a fade. You have to fade in because you can't go from, nothing to room noise and then an instrument sound. It'll click.
Right. It could click and you hear it. And here's the other thing, Rockstars, is what you're not necessarily noticing when it goes to a mixer like Jamie. Part of his job is to make sure you can hear everything, potentially. And so it's going to highlight all these little
compress and EQ
details.
I bring it up louder in the mix than you've probably ever heard it. It's going to click, especially on bass tracks and drums. You have to put a crossfade in every edit and make sure the edits play cleanly. You're not chopping off the beginning transient of the note. If you stay in grid mode all the time, that's just death.
What's a good method or a trick for rock stars to know about making sure that they can actually hear all those pops and clicks while they're cleaning it up? If they're not already, just, with
when in doubt, put a crossfade. Every edit should have a crossfade, and then you won't have a click.
I'll share one.
Okay.
This, at least something that I'll do to simulate it, is I'll throw, if it's a vocal track, I'll throw an RVox plugin on it and just jack it way up.
Yeah, when I mix,
really amped.
I'm adding 30 dB of compression to these vocals just to make it sound like a record. And if breaths are cut off, if I really plump up my waveforms when I'm doing vocal edits, and I always move edits to where the whole breath is able to be heard, Every edit has a crossfade. The beginning of the waveform, it fades in. Even if it's 10 milliseconds or 5, it won't click then. So,
all right, cool.
And a lot of people right now are Pro Tools engineers. They're not recording engineers.
Indeed,
they're they're Pro Tools techs. Let me rephrase that. Pro Tools techs are making records, not recording engineers. So you have to keep things tidy in these DAWs, because I usually spend 2 to 3 hours each song cleaning things before I even press play.
Yeah.
You know,
I feel like you were one of the people I kind of learned about cleaning up the tom tracks from.
Yeah, mute them. Don't delete them. Mute your tom tracks and unmute where the toms hit. Do a fade in, a fade out at the end of each tom hit.
Now, why do you do that?
So it doesn't click. You don't want it just to all of a sudden.
No, I mean, why do you do any editing to the tom track in the first place?
Because it's the best gate in the world. You know.
Why do you want to gate your toms?
Because I don't want all that. That's not musical.
Sustain of the drum itself.
That's not musical. Yeah.
Do you also notice that the crash cymbals usually come screaming through the tom mics?
That's why you mute the tom track before the crash hits.
Nice. So before that actual downbeat.
Yeah, you clean up the tom hit, and then you unmute the tom with a fade in, and then you make another slice, Command E for those of you using Pro Tools. You do a little fade out, like right on the next kick drum hit. Done. So,
which Rockstars can sound a little bit unnatural if you just soloed the tom track.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous. But when you add the overheads in the room, it sounds, the room covers up a lot of sins.
Right.
And the overheads. I rely on my room mic a lot.
Let's talk about your room mic. You've got one of the mics out there is this kind of famous SM58 I see that's pointed away from the drums. What's the story with that thing?
So I have my room mic. It used to be my talkback mic so the musicians can communicate with us in here. And I noticed that it sounded pretty good. So I used to have my room mic really far away, but I have this mic like 2 feet in front of the drum set with the back facing the drums. Does that make any sense? So the mic is facing away from the drum set.
As if you were a singer looking at the drums.
Yeah, standing in front of the drummer, like 2 feet in front of the drums. And it's a cardioid mic, so we all know our cardioid. That means the sound is rejected from the back. It's something like, I don't know how many dB down, but it rejects it pretty well. So I have the mic in front of the drums, rejecting the sound from the drums, and the sound has to go to the far end of the room and then back to the mic. In essence, it's doubling the length of my room. I run that through an 1176, 20-1. I'm not being stupid with it. I'm 5 to 7 dB of compression, and it makes that double length room even wider, bigger, and it sounds like a John Bonham recording then. It's
nice.
Great. That's all I do to my room mic. I don't use nuke mode on the damn distressor. I use an 1176. I don't touch it from there. That's it.
Very cool, man. I love it.
Nuke mode is evil.
Nuke mode. All right, Rockstars, we're going to take a break here and we'll come back in just in a moment for the jam session. Before you do, I want to remind you that you'll find links to everything we're talking about here with Jamie Tate.
Lidge links.
At the show notes at rsrockstars.com. And then just use the magnifying glass, search Jamie, and it'll take you right to the blog post. Also, if you were digging the music on the intro of the podcast, why that, of course, would be my record, Skadoosh, which you can find at skadooshmusic.com.
What is the sound that Skadoosh is representing? Is it like a fat lady?
Well, it turns out
right after sliding on a wet floor. I don't know why I said that. That's probably
just
offensive.
After we thought that was a great name for the record. I looked online and it's like the Kung Fu Panda
it's Kung Fu,
thing or something. I was like, no, come on. I just thought it was like Skadoosh. Man.
Skadoosh.
That's usually the sound if you like fake punch yourself or something like Skadoosh. Or like you leap off a water slide the wrong way or something, right?
Cardiopulmonary thump when somebody's having a heart attack. Skadoosh.
All right. Lastly, Rockstars, if you would like to get yourself a totally bad arse t-shirt and show the world that you are indeed a rock star, you can find that at rsrockstars.com/t-shirt.
You have a whole industry going, Lidge.
I'm working it, dude. I'm working it.
Oh,
you got to pay for that oversized mic cable that you're talking into.
It must impress the ladies.
All right, Rockstars, we'll see you in a sec. Hey, everybody, it's Lidge Shaw, and I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of Recording Studio Rockstars. I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate your time. And as a way of saying thank you, I've created a special mix tutorial just for you, Rockstars, totally free, called the Mix Master Bundle. With it, you get over 2 hours of detailed videos watching over my shoulder as I mix a song in my studio. Plus, I give you the free ebook that explains how I recorded the tracks. And you get downloadable multi-tracks so that you can practice your mixes, including the Pro Tools session file, using nothing but stock plugins in Pro Tools, all of which you would find in any other DAW, whether you're on Logic or Studio One or Reaper. Maybe you're struggling with trying to improve your mix technique, or maybe you just simply don't have access to multi-track files or can't record a full drum set in your studio. I wanted to give you a chance to create your own mixes from full drum drum kit, bass, and guitar is recorded in my studio. The song is called American Winter, and it's off my instrumental record, Skadoosh, and it's all available for you totally free right now. All you need to do to get it is text Mix Master Bundle to 33444, and I'll send it directly to your email. Again, that's Mix Master Bundle with no space to 33444, or you can go directly to mixmasterbundle.com, enter your email, and I'll send all the files directly to you. Thanks so much, rock stars. We'll see you guys in the jam session. Cheers. Hey, rock stars, welcome back. It's Lid Shaw, and you're listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. We're about to kick into the jam session with my guest today, Jamie Tate.
Before we do this, when you process my vocal for the podcast, I would request that you use only the Fairchild plugin.
Oh, I'll do it, man. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
I promise I won't listen
And I'll
to
have
that
mixed recalls after.
Yeah, send me your mixed recalls just before it goes live.
Anybody have mixed recalls for a podcast?
Midnight. I'm pretty sure we did that this week, actually. Cool, man. Well, so, Jamie, are you ready to jam?
Come on, baby.
Come on, do it.
Yeah.
So when you started out in recording, what was one of the big obstacles that was holding you back?
Ooh, I don't know. I kind of hit the ground running. Big obstacles was I wasn't mentally prepared, I guess. It just all happened so fast. It was trial by fire, and I was really scared. So
yeah, we talked about the fear factor earlier.
Yeah.
Sweating bullets before a session.
Oh my God. And you know what? I have interns now, and I put them in that same situation because that's how it happened to me. I had an intern, and out of all the dozens of interns I've had, there was this one guy who showed promise. So I stuck him in a damn recording session, a vocal session with the guy, the artist who had the #1 song that week, and he was in way over his head, and he survived, and now he's a working engineer.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love to do that with my interns too, because I think that the industry has changed, and some of the high pressure situations aren't there necessarily in the same way that they used to be.
Yeah.
But I think they should be, because that's how you learn the real value of what you're trying to do here with all this music.
Mm-hmm.
Music's so important.
And man, dude, it's all about the song. If the song sucks, who cares what plugin you're using?
Yeah, true.
And by the way, who cares what plugin you're using? We all have access to the same stuff. Never before has anybody had access to every tool ever available. It's not about the tools. It's about, how you use them. I wonder if like handymen have arguments on web forums about, I use Stanley hammers, and the other guy's going, no, I don't use Stanley hammers. I use Craftsman. Who cares?
Hey man, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail anyway.
Yeah, you can't build my house. You use Stanley tools. No, audio people are so weird about that. Those are the reissues. I don't use those.
Do the carpenters have record labels who won't hire them because they use the wrong hammer?
I don't know. I'm sure it happens. And the other thing is, when you go to the dentist, do you like come back the next day and go, man, I really want a filling recall on this? We have a weird industry here.
Anyway, it's pretty bizarre.
Sorry, go on with your questions.
Yeah, but when you go to the dentist and you don't pay the dental bill, collection agencies come after you, though. Yeah. That's quite a difference.
I had a guy owe me $17,000, and I had a collection agency go after him. This is recently, and he filed bankruptcy, and now I see him around town in a brand new car.
I never did have a collection agency go after the ones.
That was the only
who
time,
me.
And it didn't work.
Well, so now how about sharing some of the best advice? Maybe that was it.
Oh, advice. So ambition is far more important than most anything else. Show up on time, know what the hell you're wearing.
What the hell you're wearing?
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. Show up on time, be ambitious. The want to be in this industry far outweighs most any skill. You notice that? Because I'm saying even these records are being recorded by producers and non-engineering people, right? So the ambition is far more important than anything.
Yeah. Meaning we should all be producers and just be recording and not know what we're doing.
Oh, God, no.
We should stick it out.
Oh, okay. You caught me.
Be great engineers. No, most of the advice I get from people too is just that, like,
now you're telling me what to answer? Screw you, Lidge.
All right,
no, go on. What you're saying? What are you saying?
Well, no, it's just that, like, actually, I'm trying to remember the quote and I'm below it, but persistence outweighs talent every time.
That's what I was trying to edit that into my answer now. That's what I meant to say.
That's what I was just interpreting that.
I like that. I'm going to embroider that on the other pillow.
Nice. You really need to have little embroidered pillows. Throw cushions on your couch with little, like, maxims about recording,
Yeah.
What's the difference between Maxims and Axioms? Are they both the same thing?
I think one is owned by Avid.
Okay. All right. So now how about a recording tip, hack, or secret sauce, something our rock stars could use this very day on their next recording session?
Oh, the snare drum trick I talked about. I think you should try that. You'll either hate me for suggesting it or it'll open a whole new world for you. I don't know why I'm talking so slowly on this.
Give us another snare drum trick. Anything else?
What, my snare drum's not good enough with that trick?
Pretty good, man. It's pretty good.
Okay, so I don't know. My 2 mix, I guess. I've always used an SSL compressor, the G series, not the XL Logic. I don't like that one. It's too bright. Go find a G series SSL, or the Waves plugin is actually really, really accurate to my hardware. Slowest attack, fastest release, 4-to-1. Do that about 2 dB on your mix. It'll tighten everything up.
Yeah, nice. And then you were saying, I think you explained it before, that you will wait a little bit into the mix before you turn on the compression.
I have the mix done. Yeah, and then I put my compression in. So the compressor's not doing as much work.
And then you still have to make some adjustments at that point?
Yeah, then it's, adjust to taste, because maybe this guitar fill isn't loud enough, that kind of stuff. Or, the beginnings and ends of vocal lines tend to be the last things I do. I have to write up the beginnings and ends of vocals, just the lines itself, because that's where all the emotion is, at the end of the lines, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or if the vocal like dips down in pitch and gets lost in
the track. Beginning of the line, that kind of thing. Bring those up.
Nice.
But if you compact your instruments together well enough, if you have those mixed tightly enough, then your compressor doesn't have to do as much work. 1 to 2 dB of compression with 30 millisecond attack and the fastest release on the SSL at 4-to-1 will be all you need to do. It's great. It's a beautiful machine.
I love it. So now how about sharing another favorite hardware tool or something physical that when you've got it on sessions, recording and or mixing, you're just always glad you've got it?
My rack of 1176s. I love those things.
Anything that's not even recording gear? Anything in the left field?
Black Friday 2 years ago, I took my then 3-year-old son into the toy store, and he came out with this kick-ass lightsaber, and I came out with this. It's a fart machine piano, and that's how I tune vocals. When I don't know what note they're going for, I'm like, is that an F or G?
There you go.
And during sessions, that's how we find the keys of songs.
I love it, dude. That's great.
I have a whole accoutrement of fart machines. That's a fart gun from Minions in here. It's a fart in a can, but it sounds like a little gremlin growl. So there you go. We have fun. If you're not doing this for the fun of it, why the hell are you doing it? Certainly not to get paid, because we're not getting rich anymore.
Well,
You have to have fun. We have so much. I have a blast tracking. That's my favorite thing ever. Tracking.
Yeah, because there's other people in the studio.
Yeah, there's 8 other musicians looking at you, and it's awesome. The pressure's on you, and it's just so good. You share jokes, and you're hanging out with your buddies.
I agree. That's my favorite thing to do, is to hang out in the studio all day with friends.
Yeah, exactly. And you're making music, Even
I guess not just any friends. My friends who aren't musicians, I don't want to hang out with them all day in the studio.
The studio guys, I've been working with them for years. The Nashville studio musicians, they're the best in the world, and they become close friends of mine. And I love working with them.
Yeah.
Every day they're here, I'm just smiling.
How about sharing a favorite software tool or something that you just want to tell people about?
Oh yeah, the Abbey Road Red plugin is awesome. It does subtle stuff, but it sounds really great. It has this great overdrive on it. You can actually hear the tubes rattle in it. The other plugins I really love are the Bomb Factory BF76. It's great. Use that. Don't spend a bunch of money. Everybody has a copy of 1176, LA2A, blah blah blah. Just use the Bomb Factory. I almost said the F word. Fudge.
Sounds fun.
Fun. That's the F word I was looking for.
Now, what about a resource for the business side of this? Many of our listeners might want to do this for a lot more than a hobby. You got any tools?
About 5 years ago, this career choice turned into a hobby, unbeknownst to me.
What about what resource would be helpful for people as far as, I don't know, keeping themselves organized, invoicing, billing, and
I have a studio manager, and he's my greatest resource. I show up every day not knowing what the hell I'm supposed to be working on. He tells me, I'm not very organized. I'm the worst at returning emails. As Lidge will attest, he sent me like 5 emails. I just found out about him when he showed up. I'm the worst at returning phone calls. For someone in the communications world, I'm absolutely horrible at it. I live my life through text messages, but mostly it's my studio manager. He keeps me up to date and he keeps my business running. I hope he doesn't leave me ever. But I don't know, how do you get new gigs? How do you get new clients? I don't know. They just show up.
Word of mouth is always a great place to start.
I don't know how that, 25 years in this, I don't know how it's done.
How about finding a studio manager? What tip would you have for somebody for finding
I've been
themselves?
through them. Man, I went through like 8 of them.
Is this somebody who was doing it professionally and then you met them, or did you?
He was selling hi-fi gear in Chicago, and I knew him through a music collecting web forum. And yeah, he wanted to be a mastering engineer. He came down to visit. And I said, why don't you set up shop here? I had a room that was not being used all the time. So he started that. And I'm like, why don't you become my studio manager? It all kind of fell into place organically. And it's been the best thing I've ever done for my business.
So for somebody else who feels like they can relate to you in another town, they might actually just find somebody that seems like they're well organized.
Yeah, a lot of people don't have enough
learn how to do it.
Income, disposable income for their business to hire somebody like that. Man, it's going to be difficult. They use the Google Maps on their phone, or Maps, Jesus. The Google Calendar. Oh my God. I need a burrito. Burrito me, Joe.
All right, we'll wrap up here shortly. So how about an organizational resource? Now you sort of self-admittedly remove yourself from email and things like that, but what do you use online to keep yourself organized?
Organized?
Yeah.
I'm not organized.
Anything you like for just making sure your files are safely backed up and how you send them to people and that sort of thing?
There again, Joe does all that for me. Yeah. One time I print a mix, I put it on a thumb drive, I literally throw it to him across the room. He catches it half the time and he emails it to people. Same with my phone. My phone rings. I don't even look who it is. I pick it up, I toss it across the room, maybe 15 feet sometimes, and he catches it. Well, that's 100% of the time so far. He's not been fired yet.
So his job is to answer your phone for you.
Man, keep my life organized.
That's good, man. You got a good dude.
I'm so fortunate. Yeah.
How about this, man? So this one's hypothetical. Imagine you had to start all this over again.
Scratching my chin in order to...
Yeah, you need a beard like this to scratch.
Yeah.
I actually trimmed my beard last night.
You look good. You're a handsome man. I just thought I'd tell you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So do you.
Oh, thanks. I'm married. Back off.
Yeah. How about if you had to start all over doing this again and you needed a simple setup to record with, you had to find people to make music with or record, and you had to make ends meet, or you were giving that advice to somebody who's just starting out, what would you suggest?
Oh, don't focus on the gear. All gear is equal kind of now. Just get an interface that has enough inputs for you. You need 8 inputs to record drums, and find something with a few extras for guitars and vocals, and don't spend a ton of money, man. Buy some 57s. I would be perfectly happy if I had a whole session of 57s and a couple 1176s on a console. I used to do stuff on Mackie 8 buses, horrible boards, but I made great sounding recordings on them. And ADATs, remember those? Jeez.
Yeah.
Ugh, those are dark days. Don't worry about the gear, man. There's so many great mics that are affordable. Just worry about how you interact with clients. Make them feel special. Make the artist feel special. You have to be interested in their music because they can read when you're not. Yeah. And you have to be aggressive to get, not annoyingly aggressive. Don't be douchey about it. Just, become fans of the artist and they'll want you to record them. That's what I would say. And it doesn't matter where you record it. I did an album in a storage shed, those monthly rental places. We did drums there and guitars, and it turned out great. It's not about the gear or the place, man. It's about the musicians, the song, and the attitude.
What about starting out? How important do you think it is to only do music and recording? Or do you think you can go deliver pizzas to pay your rent while you're trying to get into recording?
I know a lot of people, songwriters especially. Some guy was delivering pizza up until the day he had 3 number 1s in 2 months.
Wow. All right. So don't let that be an obstacle.
Don't let anything be an obstacle. Every artist who has a hit record was probably turned on by every major record label at one point. Garth Brooks went out of town.
Yeah.
What did I say? Turned up?
I thought maybe you said turned on.
What the hell does that mean? Turned up. I'm going to turn up you for a record deal. Jeez. Yeah, Garth Brooks went around town a couple times. Jason Aldean went around Nashville. These are all country artists for all you people outside of Nashville. Went around town, was turned on by all the labels 3 times before he became, quote, legendary in town. So don't be deterred. But then again, if you're in a rock band and, when it's time to say stop. If you have a family you're trying to support,
Right. The touring, it can be the killer, not being home. Yeah. But okay, so now here's the last question. This one's...
Oh, is it over already?
This one is also hypothetical. Ooh. We're going to take the studio Wayback Machine here. Are you ready?
Do I need my Kevlar suit?
Do you have a fart noise for the Wayback Machine?
I can make one. I had a burrito for lunch.
So we're going to go back in time. We're going to find young Jamie Tate at the beginning of all this.
Who's the handsome man over there?
And you're going to go up and tap yourself on the back of the shoulder. Young Jamie Tate turns around, looks at older, wiser Jamie Tate, says, "What are you doing here?" Or get that fun out of here. and you say, "I've come to give you this bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day." What would you say?
Answer your phone, return phone calls, be better at scheduling yourself, be more prompt returning emails. Just yesterday, I missed mixing a gig for a big country artist because I didn't return the phone call quick enough.
Wow.
So but that's more of a personal thing. I don't know if that would even go for anybody else. Except
I feel like I
usually have my
Steve
head.
Albini just shared that advice. I think.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think so.
There you go. See,
you're not alone.
I wonder how far he could have gotten in his. Oh wait,
imagine. I think he might have been saying that he does answer the phone though. So dang it.
No, I'm terrible at it.
Well, dude, thank you so much for joining us on Recording Studio Rockstars. This has been an absolute pleasure.
I'm so glad to talk with you and everybody out there. Keep at it, man. Study those mixes. Study everybody else's work.
Yeah, listen, right?
Figure out what you like and what you don't, and make your stuff sound just like the way you hear it in your head.
Here's another thing. Delivering pizzas and riding around the car, it's a great place to listen to a lot of music.
Damn right. And meet girls. Isn't that how every porn starts? Hi, I'm here to fix your pipes.
Here's your pepperoni pizza.
Yeah, I'm here to deliver the pepperoni. I don't know why I became Austrian all of a sudden. But.
All right, man. Let our listeners know how they can find you, learn more about the Rukkus Room, and follow your music and connect with you when they need to have their next record.
Read my funny posts on the Facebooks. Yeah, Facebook. I'm the Jamie Tate on Twitter. It's at the Jamie Tate. I have a website. I don't think I've ever actually been on it, but it's ruckusroom.com. RUKKUS.
Nice.
Room. One word. I don't know. I'm out there.
Not to be confused with Rukkus Room.
No, or a rumpus room. We're not a daycare.
All right, cool, man. Any last parting word on our way out the door?
Turn the kick drum up.
Nice. I think that was the same comment I had when we were mixing. Probably on at least one of them. I was like,
I have a tendency to mix the kick drum way loud.
Way loud?
Yeah. There was a Black Crowes record that Mike Shirley mixed, and it was revolutionary. The kick drum was so loud. It sounds normal now, but back then it was awesome. Yeah. And kick drum's loud.
I like loud.
That's what moves the music.
I like it too. Awesome, dude. Thank you so much. We'll see you around the studio.
Thank you, Lidge. See ya.
Peace. See you later, Rockstars. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, please leave a rating and review on iTunes to help reach more people. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And if you want more free content, all you have to do is text RS Rockstars to 33444. Again, that's RS Rockstars to 33444, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, and podcast updates. And I'll let you know about any upcoming giveaway offers, all totally free. Thanks for listening. I'm Lidge Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.